In the quiet rural landscape of 1950s Blue Mountain, Alabama, the neighbors saw Nannie Doss as the quintessential giggling granny. She was a woman who seemed to radiate a simple, infectious joy, her face permanently etched with a wide, blue-eyed smile and a laugh that bubbled up at the slightest provocation. To those at the local church or the grocery store, she was the personification of Southern hospitality and maternal warmth. But beneath that jovial exterior, Nannie was a woman obsessed with a very specific, very dark fantasy, one she had spent decades cultivating through the pages of Lonely Hearts columns and romance magazines. While she searched for the perfect, rose-tinted love of a pulp novel, she left a trail of cold bodies in her wake. Husbands, children, siblings, and even her own mother were not milestones in her life, but obstacles to her idealized romance. And every time an obstacle was removed, Nannie would simply giggle, pick up her pen, and write to the next suitor on her list. Nancy Hazel was born on November 4, 1905, in Blue Mountain, Alabama, into a world defined by harsh labor and strict paternal control. Her father, James Hazel, was a stern, domineering man who ruled the household with an iron fist, forcing Nannie and her siblings to work the family farm instead of attending school regularly. Her mother, Louisa, was often the target of James's temper. The environment was one of constant toil and little affection. When Nannie was 7 years old, a train accident resulted in a severe head injury that she would later claim changed her forever, leaving her with lifelong headaches and a sense of mental fog. As she entered her teenage years, she found her only escape from the drudgery of the farm in true romance magazines. She became addicted to the idea of the perfect man, a wealthy, dashing figure who would whisk her away to a life of leisure. Her father, however, had other plans, forbidding her from wearing makeup or attending social events with boys. In 1921, at the age of 16, she married Charley Braggs, a man her father approved of because they worked together at a linen mill. It was not the romance she had dreamed of. It was merely a change of scenery from one restrictive household to another. The marriage to Charley Braggs was miserable from the start. They lived with Charley's mother, a woman who proved to be as controlling as Nannie's father. Between 1923 and 1927, Nannie gave birth to 4 daughters. The pressure of motherhood and the constant presence of her mother-in-law pushed Nannie to her breaking point. In 1927, 2 of her middle daughters died suddenly of what was diagnosed as, quote, food poisoning. Charley, suspicious of Nannie's lack of grief and the suddenness of the deaths, took his eldest daughter and fled, leaving Nannie with the newborn. They divorced in 1928. Free from her first husband, Nannie turned back to her magazines. She met Frank Harrelson through a Lonely Hearts column. They married in 1929 and moved to Jacksonville, Florida. Frank was an alcoholic with a criminal record, far from the romantic hero Nannie sought. In 1943, Nannie's newborn grandson died of a brain hemorrhage, shortly after Nannie was seen sticking a hatpin into his head. Months later, her elder granddaughter died in her care. In 1945, after Frank came home drunk from a VJ Day celebration, he died after eating a jar of Nannie's special stew. The doctors called it heart failure. Nannie collected the insurance money and moved on. Nannie's third husband was Arlie Lanning, whom she met through another mail-order advert in 1947. Arlie was a womanizer and a heavy drinker, but Nannie played the part of the doting wife perfectly. In 1950, Arlie died suddenly of what appeared to be a heart attack. After his death, the Lanning family home burned to the ground. Nannie collected the insurance. She then moved in with her sister Dovey, who was bedridden. Within months, Dovey was dead. Nannie then returned to Alabama to care for her mother, Louisa, who also died shortly after Nannie's arrival. By 1952, Nannie had married Richard Morton of Emporia, Kansas. Richard was a businessman, but he too had a wandering eye. While Nannie was distracted by her mother's death, Richard began an affair. He died in May 1953 after consuming a thermos of coffee Nannie had prepared. Finally, she met Samuel Doss of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Samuel was a clean-living, church-going man, the opposite of her previous husbands. He didn't drink or carouse, but he was frugal and disliked Nannie's romance magazines. In September 1954, after eating a prune cake Nannie baked, Samuel was hospitalized with severe abdominal pain. He recovered and returned home, only for Nannie to serve him a final roasted chicken dinner. He died that night. Samuel Doss's doctor, Dr. Leon Van Cleve, was troubled. Samuel had just been discharged from the hospital in good health, only to die hours later. He refused to sign the death certificate and ordered an autopsy. The results were staggering. Samuel's body contained enough arsenic to kill 20 men. Police arrested Nannie in November 1954. Initially, she played the role of the grieving, confused widow, giggling nervously during questioning. However, when investigators confronted her with the autopsy findings, the facade began to crack. She eventually confessed to killing Samuel, claiming she did it because he was too restrictive and wouldn't let her watch the television programs she liked. As the investigation widened, authorities exhumed the bodies of 4 of her previous husbands, her mother, her sister, and her 2 grandsons. Every single one of them tested positive for lethal amounts of arsenic or rat poison. Nannie sat in the interrogation room, leafing through a romance magazine and laughing as she detailed how she had mixed the poison into their food, prunes, coffee, and moonshine, all while looking for her real soulmate. The trial of Nannie Doss began in Tulsa in 1955. The press dubbed her the giggling granny because of her jovial demeanor in the courtroom. She appeared completely detached from the gravity of the charges, often joking with reporters about her search for the perfect husband. Because of the overwhelming evidence in the Samuel Doss case, Oklahoma prosecutors focused solely on his murder to ensure a swift conviction. On May 17, 1955, Nannie Doss pleaded guilty to the murder of Samuel Doss. Despite the multiple other suspected deaths, the state did not seek the death penalty, partly due to her gender and her perceived mental instability stemming from her childhood head injury. She was sentenced to life imprisonment at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary for women. Nannie took the sentence in stride, reportedly telling prison officials she enjoyed the routine and the company of the other inmates. She died of leukemia in the prison infirmary in 1965, exactly 10 years after her conviction. Nannie Doss remains one of the most prolific female serial killers in American history, not because of a grand criminal mastermind, but because of the terrifying banality of her motives. She didn't kill for political reasons or deep-seated hatred. She killed because her victims were inconvenient to her fantasy. She was a woman who lived her entire life in the shadow of a fictional romance, unable to reconcile the reality of human flaws with the perfection of a magazine story. Her giggle was the sound of a profound emotional vacancy, a total lack of empathy for those she claimed to love. The case serves as a chilling reminder that the most dangerous monsters aren't always hiding in the dark. Sometimes, they are sitting right across the dinner table, smiling, laughing, and offering you a piece of cake.